Hi, this is your host. When it comes to giant predatory dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex and C. Megalodon, we often think of their size and ferocity as the main reasons why they were successful apex predators. But these guys weren't the first of their kind to rule the oceans and the land. Hundreds of millions of years before any of the famous meat-eaters evolved, there were other vicious predators that used different strategies to take down prey. And by studying them, we can learn how some of the most iconic carnivores got their start. In the case of T-Rex, its ancestors were much smaller and looked more like a chicken than a king. In fact, fossils of some early theropods have actually been found with injuries consistent with being hunted by much larger animals. So while these dinosaurs would eventually go on to become apex predators, for quite some time they were prey animals themselves. But long before these small protoarthropods roamed what would become the western side of North America, another killer was stalking the shallow seas around the world. The ancient beast we're talking about is Hynerpeton, one of the earliest known large carnivores from the Devonian period. Living around 360 million years ago, this creature had already mastered the art of the ambush. It's estimated that Hynepeton could grow up to 4 meters long, putting it somewhere between a great white shark and an orca in terms of size. However, scientists aren't sure if this was the maximum size for all Hynerpetons or just a particularly large specimen. It also had several features that helped it be successful at hunting, including a large skull with powerful jaws, hundreds of sharp teeth, and eyes located high up on the sides of its head, which gave it binocular vision, meaning it could judge distances more accurately when attacking prey. Hynerpeton had a very distinct jaw that helped it stand out from other fish in the water. Its upper jaw extended far past the rear of the skull, creating almost a shelf supported by 3 pairs of strong arching bones. These bones protected the sides of the head and gave attachment points for powerful jaw muscles. On the end of the lower jaw were 2 elongated bones that created a shelf similar to the upper jaw, but on the opposite side of the mouth. This lower shelf was connected to the rest of the jaw by flexible joints, allowing it to move independently. This unusual jaw structure has led some scientists to hypothesize that Hyenapiton was able to suck in prey like a vacuum cleaner. Others believe it could open its mouth extremely wide, perhaps even 180 degrees, to engulf prey whole. Scientists are currently leaning towards the latter, but without any living relatives of Hyenapiton, it's hard to say for sure exactly how this strategy would have worked. But there's evidence that suggests whichever method this fish used, it took down prey very effectively. One of the key pieces of evidence is the study of bite force. Paleontologists used a mathematical formula to estimate the amount of force Hyenodon could exert on its prey based on the strength of its jaw and skull bones. They discovered that this fish could chomp down with the force of 2,700 newtons. For comparison, a great white shark can exert about 12,000 newtons of force when biting down on its prey. So Hyenodon didn't have the strongest bite of all time, but its bite was still pretty powerful. And that's because it only needed about 1,350 newtons of force to break through a turtle shell or crush a fishbone. What makes this calculation so amazing is that Hyenodon lived more than 100 million years before the first sharks ever appeared on the scene. Yet its bite force was comparable to that of a shark, even though Hyenodon wasn't even a close relative of sharks. The only living creatures that share a common ancestor with Hyenodon are lungfish, which don't have nearly as strong a bite. This means that Hyenodon was able to evolve a powerful bite independently from other large predatory fish. And what's even crazier is that it accomplished this feat in only about 10 million years. For context, it took sharks over 200 million years to get their powerful bites. So either Hyenodon was evolving faster than average, or it was directly benefiting from the arms race with prey animals. It seems likely that both factors were at play. While Hyenodon was developing traits that allowed it to feed on a wider variety of prey, the animals it hunted were also changing and becoming more difficult to eat. Animals like placoderms were evolving thicker armor and bony shells, forcing Hyenodon and other predators to adapt or die off. Interestingly, it looks like Hyenodon may have benefited from having weaker jaws earlier in its evolutionary history. When studying the skull of one species, scientists discovered that it had a weak point, a thin area where the front of the upper jaw attached to the skull. It probably wasn't very good for delivering a powerful bite. However, over time, this area became reinforced and fused together, creating a stronger connection that could deliver a much more powerful bite. This trait would have given Hyenapiton an advantage in the war between predator and prey, because the evolution of armor-plated fish happened very quickly. Some scientists think this rapid evolution was due to an increase in the number of large predatory fish in the ocean. So not only did Hyenapiton need to keep up with the rapidly changing landscape of prey, it also had to deal with competitors that wanted a piece of the action. And it wasn't just Hyenapiton that was evolving new adaptations during this time. Some animals were also coming up with clever ways to avoid being eaten. One group of fish evolved hard, bony armor, including a protective head shield. Their bodies were covered in thick armor plates that were made of dentin, the same substance that makes up tooth enamel. Not only did this make them more resistant to being bitten, also made them harder to recognize. No external scales or markings could get in the way. Another type of fish evolved to be incredibly slippery. Unlike modern fish, which have overlapping scales, their scales were smooth and didn't overlap. This reduced drag in the water and allowed them to swim very fast, making it difficult for Hyenapiton and other fish to catch them. The reason why these adaptations were so important is because the Devonian was a hot time to be alive. Scientists estimate that the average global temperature was 20 degrees Celsius higher than it is today. This meant that the oceans were warm and full of oxygen, allowing fish to grow much larger than they do now. Many of these gigantic fish were also active predators, but they weren't built for speed. Instead, they had massive, crushing jaws that could easily devour a human. One of these fish was Dunkleosteus, which could grow up to 8 meters long. Another was Australopithecus, which was covered in large diamond-shaped scales and had huge jaws that could reach 1.5 meters in length. Dunkleosteus and Australopithecus weren't the fastest fish in the sea, but they didn't need to be. Because of the bony armor of their prey, these fish could easily injure themselves when biting down on their prey. This meant that prey animals had an opportunity to escape if they were injured, but not if they were completely encased in thick armor. So animals that were covered in tough armor were able to grow much larger than their fast-swimming counterparts. And it seems like this played right into the hands of Hyenapiton and other large predatory fish. Even though some prey animals like placoderms were well protected, Hyenapiton was still able to use its powerful jaws to take them down. And even if the prey animal managed to get away, Hyenapiton had more tricks up its sleeve. It could also be very agile in the water, thanks to its narrow body shape and small dorsal and pectoral fins. This meant that it could turn quickly and easily maneuver around its prey. So, thanks to its combination of powerful jaws and incredible agility, Hyenapiton was able to reign supreme in the Devonian seas. However, after ruling for about 10 million years, this ancient apex predator abruptly disappeared from the fossil record. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly why this extinction event occurred, but it may have been due to changes in sea level or climate. Whatever the reason, Hyenapiton went extinct before the end of the Devonian, leaving the seas empty for a new predator to claim. Millions of years later, a very different type of fierce predator would rise to the surface. Ichthyosaurs were a diverse group of marine reptiles that lived during the Mesozoic era. Like Hyenapiton, they had a large mouth and powerful jaws, but unlike Hyenapiton, they were related to dinosaurs. They evolved from terrestrial ancestors that returned to the sea to fill the niche left by Hyenapiton. But this wasn't easy, especially since they had to compete with sharks. Sharks had evolved hard, smooth skin that reduced drag in the water and allowed them to swim much faster than ichthyosaurs. But ichthyosaurs had another trick up their sleeves: hyper-adaptable teeth. Ichthyosaurs had multiple rows of teeth that came in behind each other, allowing them to replace lost teeth quickly. Some species even had teeth adapted for crushing, tearing, or catching slippery prey. These innovations allowed ichthyosaurs to take down a wider variety of prey than any other marine reptile of the time, which gave them a competitive edge against sharks. And while neither ichthyosaurs nor sharks were the first of their kinds, both groups were able to fill a vacant ecological niche left by a mysterious mass extinction. By studying how these creatures exploited new opportunities, we can better understand how some of the most famous monsters of the prehistoric world evolved. If you enjoyed learning about these ferocious beasts, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And as always, thank you for watching.